It becomes amazing. Okay. Welcome, Wayshower.
Welcome, welcome.
So
Here's what I'm gonna do. I do hear the sound coming through. So here's what I'm gonna do.
yeah, it's so funny because I even have my headphones plugged in, but the speaker is still coming through the speaker. So weird. But here we are.
Yep.
Technology.
We'll make it work. Cool.
Well, Facebook land. We're just getting set up here. So excited to drop in with Wayshower. Wayshower has produced multiple of my sound healing tracks. And yeah, celebrating that our Gaia song is up to almost 200,000 views on YouTube. Like, incredible.
That's
so
awesome.
Epic. Yeah. If you're joining us live, this live stream is really geared towards sound healers and practitioners of music as medicine. Wayshower is an incredible producer, an incredible sound healer, spiritual guide, and so many more things. But I really love your approach and the wisdom that you bring around sound healing and vibration as medicine, and just super excited to dive into this conversation because I feel like, as we've had multiple conversations, there's so many things that people are taught in online sound healing courses or people that have never taken a sound healing training or whatever, and there's just a lot of things that we're taught, like this bowl is the heart chakra and this bowl is for the root chakra and it's this note and that's associated with that, and it's like there's so much more to it, and I would love to just shed more light and bring some more awareness around the subtleties and the other layers that are happening as we bring sound as medicine, frequency as medicine, and like our roles as the facilitators of like holding these containers. So all that being said, thank you so much for doing this live stream with me, and yeah, so happy to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, I haven't actually had a conversation like this in public in a while, so it feels good to just be like, "Hey, we're here, doing the thing."
We're doing it. Yeah, so good, so good. Yeah, so would love for you to just kick us off. Like, what feels alive for you to share? Like, as we have sound healers joining us for this live stream, like, what are some of the things that you see a lot of in the sound healing space and community that you want to bring to light?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the places I might like to start is a little bit of history in my experience, because I do feel like it's shaped how I now view the sound healing community and how I've guided people in kind of a teaching or mentorship capacity, and how I just view how people are getting into this field and what they often have questions about, and things that they are or are not trained in, and then also some of the what I would consider to be pitfalls that they can sometimes fall into. But I actually studied sound therapy with Fabien Maman, and Fabien Maman is one of the OGs of vibrational sound therapy. I think he was actually in the Webster's dictionary as like the founding father of vibrational sound therapy at some point in time. But he's like in the line of like is it Jacques Cousteau, I think is his name, who brought tuning forks out of France. Fabien did a similar thing and had some really cool experiments that he did back in the 80s. But my experience with him, just in a real nutshell, was that he had a really interesting take on sound and sound therapy. He was very nature-based. He was very much a kind of a shaman in his own right, European shaman. And like his version of a sound bath, for example, was like trying to recreate sounds of nature. Like he was very vocal around some of the stuff that he saw going on in the community that was, let's just say, a lot more loud and expressive. And I would say that he had his own kind of perceptions just based on the fact that he had a really keen perception on the subtleties of sound, and his whole practice was built on the subtleties of sound. Like what is sound doing that we can't see or feel? And he had his own ideas of what that might be. And I think one of the main takeaways I had from that was that just like sound has such a subtle impact. And oftentimes humans that are working with sound and music, they really want to feel it, which is great because that feeling then leads to the influence that it can have on our mental, emotional, or spiritual state, physical state. But there's definitely a lot to be felt in a more metaphysical sense, we'll say. So that was kind of a main takeaway that I got from him. But he also clued me in on some of the history of sound therapy because he was there for it, right? So, for example, he saw the emergence of crystal singing bowls, right? That came onto the market, and he also saw that early on the whole, this note equals this chakra was born from crystal bowl manufacturers. Like that is the origin of that perception. But interestingly enough, he had his own perception on which note. He still thought there was actually a singular note that each chakra was like resonant with. But his was based on, if you know music, or if you've heard the musical term, the cycle of fifths. So like his concept was like the root was F, and then the sacral was C, because that's the next fifth, and so on and so forth. So a cycle of fifths. And what was interesting about that is that, he had a really interesting perception on relationships when it comes to sound. And that's the key piece that I, as a practitioner, researcher, and teacher, have really kind of come to understand in my feeling and sense and practice of it, is that sound and music is much more about like the relationships versus the static, like this thing does that thing. Because what I'll kind of wrap that piece up with in my history with Fabian was that, like, I did not necessarily end up resonating completely with his system, his modality, because he had kind of, again, codified like a system, and he felt that system was, effective, and it was, I think, from a healing capacity. I mean, I saw it effective, and when I studied with him, and the static nature of it, in my experience, had me kind of bumping up against it at one point in time as a practitioner, because I just felt in my sessions that I wanted to do it differently, or do something else, or turn this way. And so all of that gave me this kind of, it cracked me open to this understanding that in my experience now, is that sound and sound therapy and working with sound as a healing tool is much more subjective, I think, than what this community is oftentimes introduced to. Because again, we hear this note does this, or this does this. And in my discovery and unfoldment in my own practice and working with others, it's got more of a subjective and relationship based type of medicine, we'll call it.
Yeah, and what's really striking me about what you're saying right now is like that part of you that, like, you work with this teacher, and this is what his perspective is of sound healing and what he prescribes as, the way. But then in practicality, as you brought in the teachings and you were feeling that budding up happening of like, but there's something in me that's wanting to create something different than what this box of rules has instructed me, that's where our intuition comes in, and our unique role as a channel of the divine, as a vessel for music to come through us, that it's not cut and dry. It's not, this is the only way, or this is the right way of, like, the best way of sound healing or whatever, right? And I think it's so important to, like you said, it's not as subjective as like, this note is for the heart chakra, and this note is for the root chakra, and like these are the specific frequencies to heal that part of your body. Like it can't be that simple, you know, like we're vibrational beings, and there has to be so much more than that. And also there is this other factor and element of your intuition of what is wanting to come through you in this session for this person or this group of people. And that artistry that comes through, and that, you know, that finesse of whatever is wanting to channel through you in that moment. So it's like holding the technique and holding the, you know, as much as we can know about vibration and sound healing, and your intuition as a practitioner of what's needed in the space.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And there was something that you said there, I think that was key, and that was like about the simplicity piece of it, right? And that's kind of like that. This is the thing that I see when it comes to this like perception of these like miracle frequencies, for example, right? Like for solfeggio frequencies or this kind of thing. And it's like, it's this perception that I think is a deeper layer, and we can talk about this or not, but just within the healing community in general, where there's just kind of this underlying feeling with a lot of people, especially those who are maybe a little bit newer, we'll say, to the space of like a fix me type of thing. Right. Like I just want to show up and I just want something to turn on and fix all my problems. And, you know, and that's kind of one of the things that's really steered my path as a healing practitioner and as a guide and mentor and coach and, you know, whatever hats that I'm wearing, is that it's whenever it seems like it's too easy in terms of like the modality, you know, and what it's supposedly supposed to be doing, that's always a red flag for me. Right. Because it just doesn't make sense to me that the divine intelligence that has us here on earth learning what we're doing and evolving the way that we do would just, yes, put the things here that we need in order to learn and evolve. But that would make it so easy just to like turn on a button, you know, put on the right music, and all of a sudden, you know, our DNA is fully repaired and we're totally ascended, and like all of our stuff.
You're saying if I don't put my YouTube video on at night when I'm sleeping with the 111 frequency, it's not gonna like magically heal me overnight?
I'm sorry to report. I do not believe that is likely going to happen, unless, and here's the paradox, unless you're ready for it.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly if you're like in that space and you're like dialed in and you're like, you've gotten to that point where it's like you really are ready to make that shift, whatever that shift represents by that frequency or music, it can happen. It definitely can. But I would wager that most of the folks that are kind of listening to those frequencies for the reason that they're doing it, you know, are likely not going to be getting the outcome that they're hoping, at least in a way that sticks, a way that like actually gets them through something or healing something or transmuting or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I love this. So good. And so in a like a practical lens, right? Like you're a practitioner and you're showing up and you're doing a sound healing, whether it's for one person or a group of people, you know, taking people on a journey with sound, instruments, your voice, whatever that is. What do you feel is like, what would you want to share and impart with people that are practically doing this, that have learned this kind of like very basic, like here's my set of 7 crystal bowls and each one has a note that, you know, aligns to the chakras, like, and they're kind of like playing through that lens. What would you want to share with those people of like a new way of looking at it, or or in addition to that, that would just help kind of broaden and expand their understanding of what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I always invite people into is like, you know, kind of like the why, like what are they doing this for? You know, because I think when it comes to, for example, groups scenarios, like I think a sound bath is like a good term for a lot of the things that we do, because I think it's great to just show up and, get showered with some sound, and, that will do some things for some people and some things for others. And that's great. Right. And some people will have profound experiences within those spaces that we create.
Yeah.
That being said, if we are looking at wanting to support a more comprehensive and complete like healing journey, I do think that can be done in a group setting. It's going to be, I think, a little bit more effective in an individual setting. But with that lens of like, okay, I really want to invite people into a more ideal opportunity for healing. And in my experience, it's actually really simple, because one of the things that I always invite new practitioners to do is kind of divorce themselves from this perception that the sound instruments are the ones like doing the healing.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, because there is this perception that like crystal singing bowls are just automatically healing. Well, I know some people that hear crystal singing bowls and like their head is like wanting to split open, and and of course some of the community be like, that's the stuff that you have to work on. Well, not necessarily. Sometimes it just doesn't resonate. Right.
Yeah.
And so they're not just intrinsically healing. Yes, they are intrinsically calming, I think, just to the human nervous system. If played correctly, that's why they work. But what I will say is, like there's kind of 3 phases that I teach when I kind of guide people into a deeper opportunity to, or teach and also facilitate as a facilitator. And this can be done in an individual or group setting. And the 3 phases really are just like, the primary phase is that like safety and security and that like landing for people. Right. And like having done a good amount of like plant medicine work, right? Like the ceremonies I went to were really strong containers. And even just this one, I just did a workshop I was telling Savannah about just before this call this weekend, where it's like really great space holding, and great space holding because, the intro to that space was very like safe, secure, trust built. So that safety and security and the ability to kind of land and like lower the defenses a little bit is like a really important primer before we kind of get them into that healing space. And so what that could look like on a group level is just, a little bit more on the front end of the group experience of inviting people to land, versus like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm going to do this thing. And, you're going to lay down and then you just got to go into it. And I know sometimes practitioners are dealing with time, but at the same time, some really key and targeted ways to get people to actually like connect and land and drop their defenses and tune in can actually make a huge difference on how they actually experience what's to come. And then the centerpiece where the work is done can really look so many different ways. I mean, there's infinite combinations of how we play those instruments and what we end up doing. And I think that can be done from a more intuitive space. And on a group level, it's like tuning into the room, feeling into like how the instruments might want to be expressed in that room. On an individual level, this is where we can get a little bit more deep, right? Because if people are going through their process, we can guide them through, and there's tips and tools that I won't get into, but that particular piece is important. And yet there's so much that can be done there. And so it's almost not as important as actually the 2 end pieces, in my opinion, because the third part being like the integration. And this is like a major part that I see a lot of healing practitioners in general oftentimes miss.
Yeah.
I remember the first time that I went to like a massage therapist, and like the first time I went to a really informed one. And first of all, she like got into the places that I'd never thought you could get into. So that was like a whole other experience. But then she like gave me homework, which I'd never gotten from a massage therapist. Like, okay, now do this movement to help, work this in. And the same thing happens on any level, body, mind, spirit. It's like if we've gone through an experience that has cracked us open or helped us move through something, that might have repatterned something, but that pattern's still going to be there when we go back to our daily life. So what can we do to continue to integrate and repattern that? And that's really the key things that I think I always invite practitioners into really working strongly on, are those like end cap pieces. Because like that middle piece of whatever we're doing with the instruments, I mean, there's a lot that we can do there. And there's some beautiful work done there. And if those two pieces aren't there, people can go in, have a really beautiful experience, but then they're kind of left cracked open, and then they just shrink back
And
in.
what? Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So that's really, that would be my suggestion, is like, how can you work on those pieces of the experience to where you can really feel solid in helping people feel safe, and then helping people like have some kind of integration and support afterwards, whatever that looks like.
So powerful. It's like, it's making me think of like, you know, when I went and did a ayahuasca ceremony back in 2022, which really kicked me off on doing sound healing. Like that was the wisdom I received in that ceremony, was to start bringing my voice into my work. And I remember someone telling me, like, you know, ceremony really begins when you leave. It's like when you go to the ceremony, you sit in ceremony, or the sound healing journey, or whatever it is, like, you get to feel this experience of what's possible. You get to tap into an altered state of being. But then when you go back home and you leave that space, you have all of your normal day-to-day things, and you have normal life, right? And like you said, it's so easy to just go right back into that holding pattern or that way of being. And like, that really is when ceremony begins. It's like you get that taste and that experience of what's possible when you're, you know, dropped into peace and inner stillness and clarity. But then when you leave, it's like, how do we continue that journey? How do we continue to integrate and embody what we've experienced in ceremony?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm so curious for you, like, what are some things that you do when you hold a group space like that? Like, what are some of your invitations for integration for your participants?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I'm always a fan of journaling, you know, so I'll always like invite people, because I like to do, my sound journeys are kind of like a lot of times it's like a shamanic visioning type of sound journey. So I'm really inviting people into a little bit more of a visionary space, and always inviting, and even in visionary being like all sensory, right? So I typically really invite people to be active in their experience, so they're not just, you know, zonking out and receiving, which is great. I'm usually inviting people to tune in to what's going on, and like be active with their breath around moving through things, and just really observing without judgment, so that by the end they have something there, and then they can journal on it. Yeah, I mean, if it's a bigger group where I don't have an opportunity, because a lot of times I will get a little bit more individual, like if it's a smaller group, because a lot of times in my experiences, like I'm walking around the room, and I usually pick up things for people. And so sometimes I might impart things to people individually just as a reflection point. But if it's more general, journaling, and then also just the invitation for creating space, you know, so instead of going, well, even if you're going back into a very busy life and world, creating space and just being present with what's there. Because that's one of the things I've definitely seen from the very get-go when it comes to sound, is that sometimes it can just like knock some shit loose in our body, in our mind, in our whatever. And then, you know, that could come around a week, a couple days, a week, or whatever, however long later, and just all of a sudden we just, you know, start pouring tears, we start, you know, something happens. And so just the invitation to just be present if something comes up that seems a little out of the ordinary for folks, you know, or just being present with whatever emotions or things that come up, not being surprised when maybe life then throws a curveball, because the physical world around us can oftentimes like just throw something into our reality based on what we did, you know? Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Love that. And I'd love to also speak to, I mean, partly because, you know, my path has been very like focused on using the voice as instrument in sound healing, right? And using voice channeling melodies and bringing that aspect into the sound healing space. And would love to hear for you anything that you'd like to share around that, around bringing your voice in as a healing instrument.
Yeah, well, the voice is the most powerful healing instrument. It just really is, because one of the things that I discovered is that, like, with all the stuff that we can talk about in terms of like what notes or sounds or various things can do for like our chakra system or that kind of thing, the thing that I've found consistently is that the voice is going to be the primary tool to be able to provide the medicine for the reorientation of those parts of our system, especially the unseen ones, but also the physical, and there's all kinds of stuff that's emerged. I mean, some of the pioneers in this field, like, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Jonathan Goldman. He talks about humming, for example, and just the power of humming. And there's all kinds of science to back up what the voice does to the body for calming the nervous system and stuff. But on my personal journey, like, the voice was a big tool that we used in Tamado, Fabian Maman's school. And he actually introduced us to this really powerful practice, which is an ancient Japanese practice of pure vowels and consonant exploration called kodotama. And for what it's worth, I think this is like, we're talking like Lemurian, origin, like whatever ancient, Pacific Islander civilization origin type of stuff. And when you look at actually these vowels in kodotama, they really are like the primary vowel sounds that we see in the most ancient languages, because those ancient languages all had a similar kind of bedrock of sounds, especially with vowels. And so we would do regular work with the kodotama sounds.
I'm so curious if it sounds similar, because I was just at a Parangi retreat immersion in Sedona, and he taught us about seed sounds. And I'm wondering if it's similar, because it was basically like mu, mo, ma, me, mi, mer, and the me and the mer creates these overtones. And it was so cool. It was just like so powerful. We all did it together on the same note, and we were just in this like incredible unison of these different vowel sounds. And I'm curious if that's similar to what you're talking about.
Can I tell you a fun story about that?
Yeah.
Very quick. I'll be very quick. So I had been doing kodotama work for a number of years before I even knew about Parangi. And one of the things that and there was a couple pieces that clicked into place for this, because there was also this guy, Thomas, I don't know his name, but he runs a last name off the top of my head, but he ran a Facebook group called The Art and Science of Sound Healing. And he actually did a frequency analysis of the voice with different vowel sounds. And what he found is that each of these kind of primordial vowel sounds actually highlights a particular harmonic. So whenever we do a sound with our voice, there's multiple harmonics, which is like, mathematically harmonious, like overtones above like the fundamental frequency. It's what makes up our voice. But when we shape that sound into various sounds, it like highlights a particular overtone. And what I found in that is that it seemed like there were certain overtones that were kind of highlighted in like the first fundamental, we'll call it, and based on the orientation of the vowel sounds. And so what I started doing on my own based on this I took the kodotama sounds, which the ones that were taught to me were ah, e, o, u. So 5 of the same ones that you learned with Parangi. And what I started doing was I started feeling into and experimenting and realizing that they actually very perfectly align with each chakra, starting from the bottom and this is how I discovered it, because I realized that when you naturally kind of make that sound, when you do an sound, but you kind of have an open inner mouth, right? So you go, and you just barely open your mouth. You've got already kind of an O or oo sound. So if you start with the oo, which is a little bit more of an exaggerated kind of pointed ooh, from there, all you're doing is just opening up your mouth to create the other vowel sounds, right? So,
Right.
right? So
Yep.
I started doing that practice on my own, with just going ooh all the way up to the E. I did not do the And several years ago, I went to one of Parangi's things and I saw him doing that. And I was like, oh, snap. Like,
Yeah.
this is a thing, you
I
know?
know when you did it, I was like, I've heard him do this on his songs, like on Spotify. And I was just like,
Mhm.
that's what he's doing. It's so cool.
Yeah. So there's definitely something there. And it's something that you can actually find in a lot of places around the earth, right? And just to kind of wrap that up with like why I kind of went into this was that the if I were to claim, we'll say, or support an idea that some system applied to the chakras, it would be that, like a
Hmm.
static system where like the oo is like seated in the lower chakras, the o, you know, and that kind of thing. That would be what I would support, because that when you piece those vowels together with also the lift of frequency, I think we did this in Parangi, right? Where you kind of go like ooh, and you go like lower to higher voice. I don't know
Mm.
if you did that with him, but so if you do that along with the change in the vowels, that to me represents the best way to actually like sweep frequency through our chakra bodies and our physical body, and actually like target those parts of our body with sound
Yeah.
most effectively, we'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely mentioned that it does create like a sweeping, and we could feel that, right? He's like, don't believe me, try it and see what feels true for you in your body, right? And um, this this idea of the voice being the instrument, which honestly should just be a whole other live stream, but I want to touch on it, is like not only you as a practitioner using your voice as a healing instrument for a person or a group of people, right? Like when we're channeling melodies or we're, making sound, and sending vibration through our voices, but also inviting your participants to use their own voices for their own bodies. Like,
Yeah.
and this is really what I'm fucking interested in these days. Is the field and the healing that happens when bodies, people come together and vibrate within their own bodies and their own beings, and come into their own inner harmony, their own inner resonance, right? And also in the collective of the group.
Mm.
And like bringing our voices together, and like there's all this science and research that's being done now of the fucking myriad of benefits that happens when we sing together, when we
Mm-hmm.
make sound together. And like it creates empathy and compassion. Like when you sing next to someone and your voices and your vibrations like intermingle, it literally just naturally creates this like softness and this empathy and compassion to, like, it could be a total stranger sitting next to you, standing next to you, singing, and it creates this empathy and compassion. And like as I look at, if I zoom out and I look at what is possible and what is needed in the world right now, which is unity and compassion and love and consideration and all these things, that like something so fucking simple as singing together can create this natural cohesiveness, this natural unity, this natural like oneness through groups of different people, of random people coming together, right? Like there was like over 50 people at the Prangi retreat, and we're all like basically strangers coming together in a circle and we're singing together, and it creates this intimacy and it creates this safety and this love and this container where healing happens, not because it's like we're going into our inner child work, but because the music itself and the vibration of being in the circle together naturally creates an environment where healing can happen. And like, this is what is like so fucking lighting me up these days, is like, how do we create more containers of healing through sound and through music where everyone is using their voices, and it's not just this like passive experience where there's one sound healer sharing vibration in a room and you're just like laying down and receiving and, you know, letting the sound, you know, do its work, but like being a more dynamic and active experience where we're all healing together through our own instruments.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. Yeah. From like the early years when I was doing like group sound experiences, I always had people using their voice, you know, and I have people show up and I'd be like, all right, before we get started, we're going to be doing some, you know, some tones together. And some people would be like, huh, what? I'm going to do the thing. Which is always interesting, because it's like, it's also interesting just how much, I also spent a few years kind of post my graduation with Fabian doing like targeted vocal empowerment work, because I was just started realizing how much of our experiences wrapped up in our voice, and how much the voice carries like clues to the traumas and various things that we, you know, carry. But so it was interesting to see how people would respond to that. But, you know, I always made it accessible, and it always made the experience different. Like in what I would call a good or more positively impactful or a deeper way. Because even just the starting coherence of having all of us do some sounds together, I could see just the collective field just like calm down, sync up, you know, and that kind of thing. And it was just even with a little bit of vocal work. Yeah.
Yeah. So powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So good. I feel like I'm just like, okay, I need to do a whole thing on that now. Next. That's the next live stream.
Yeah.
This feels like, yeah, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your expertise and your experience. And, you know, I love what Ferengi says, which is like, don't believe me, you know, feel what feels true in your body. Like, you know, take what resonates and leave the rest. You know, there's so much that we don't know about sound and how sound heals the body and you know, all the things. And so just trusting your own discernment with everything of what feels true for you. And but yeah, so grateful for you bringing your wisdom and your knowledge and sharing that in this space. Where can people find you, and is there anything that you're sharing or offering to the world right now?
Yeah, good question. Well, I want to tap on what you just said there, just as a final parting note too, because one of the things that I've been inviting people that I come across that are new practitioners into is, like, if you're working with instruments, whether it's your voice or whatever it is, like take some time to get to know those instruments, right? And really like allow them to reveal to you how they express themselves. A lot of times when I'm working with people on a mentorship capacity, I have them really try to like dissect like the expressions of their instrument with like vocabulary and feelings. You know, like if you've got a Himalayan singing bowl, it's like, you know, how can you describe the sounds that you hear coming out of that bowl? You know, are they wobbly? Is it high? Is it low? Is it whatever it can be? But even beyond that, just like feeling into that and seeing how they express themselves, I feel like that's what then can lead you down that more intuitive path. Because I'm all about just kind of deprogramming people from it, like it has to be this way.
Right.
And I think one of the things is that when you have these instruments, like this gong behind me, for example, like I still have so much to learn about this thing, because it expresses in so many different ways. And I kind of understand how it expresses. And when I understand how it expresses, and not just how it makes me feel, because that's going to be subjective to me, but when I understand how it expresses, and if I can kind of, you know, codify that by either vocabulary or even elemental type things, like is it fiery, is it, you know, that kind of thing, then that starts helping me understand how it can be wielded. right? Because if I know one of my instruments brings the energy of the room up, well, then I know if I need to bring the energy of the room up, I'm going to use that one instrument, right? So just wanted to kind of tap on that because, like, yeah, I think the intuitive piece is just like explore on your own and really get to understand your tools. Like, if you really want to be effective at using them for the right reasons and at the best time, we'll say most ideal time and effect, then that's the way to do it. So just wanted to leave folks with that. And then in terms of what I'm doing, yeah, it's interesting. I've been I've been pretty dormant for a little while, but I am stepping back out. And actually, one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm putting together an ebook that I'm calling kind of a master, and not as in I'm the master, but just like a master handbook type of thing, right? Where I'm just consolidating all the information that I have been exposed to, that I know I can vet, and other teachers have put out there, and just anything that you can think about when it comes to being a sound therapy practitioner. I just want to put it in there because I see so many questions coming from this community around things that, like, I think if they just had like a guide, around certain things that I think are, relevant just to know, little bits of music theory, maybe, some stuff around recording and streaming, various things like that. I'm going to put that all in there. So yeah, I'm hoping to get that done soon. It's going to be like an ebook format. I just want to get it out to people. I might not even charge for it. I don't know yet. I just want to get it out there. Yeah.
So good, so needed, and just, so valuable because you really are such a wealth of knowledge because you care to learn and you're so like hungry for this information. Like, it's such a beautiful gift for all the sound healers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it will be, I want to help people discover, discover how they can wield it to that authentic place, kind of divorce themselves from the systems that we might hear about, but still be able to have something to refer to when they might, have a question or taking a step in a certain direction. And the last thing I'll say there is that, one of the things that I have progressed to in my experience is then expanding beyond this as like a primary modality, and now use it more as a tool, and kind of expand it into more like, okay, how can I explore my own unique gifts on how I can help people heal or help people overcome some kind of challenge, and then integrate sound into that. So I would say that if there's anybody out there that is interested in really going down that path, I would say that's where I've been going with my leadership and mentorship, where it's like really inviting people into the kind of the initiation of the soul to really align with like the intrinsic medicine within us and how it wants to express, and then understanding that, yeah, we're attracted to these things like sound and music or whatever modality, but how can we not identify as like that's our thing, and be more embodied into what our personal expression is, and then just understand how to use these tools at the right time. Yeah,
love that. So beautiful. Yeah, so beautiful. Yeah, so appreciate you sharing all of that and just the work that you're doing in the world. And yeah, ebook sounds top tier. So good.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. And I'll just say, for any of you out there that are, you're on the sound medicine path, but you see yourself as really stepping onto stages and being more of an artist versus, just doing sound baths, which is like so beautiful and so powerful. But for the people that are looking to really be on global stages and to share your music on a broader platform, recording and releasing your sound medicine tracks on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and all of that. I have one space open this fall for mentorship to really go from sound healer to embodied visionary artist. Really building a movement around your music, and not just creating music, but using music as a modality in your transformational containers, whether that's on retreat or, Parangi style, where it's, a room of 200 people and facilitating workshops and also sound journeys, whatever your version is of that. reach out to me and we can chat about if it's a good fit or not. But
yeah, can I
in the
tap on that
meantime,
just for a quick second?
yeah, please.
Because I know that you've I've seen this offering kind of coming forth from you recently, and actually, I just want to share that, you know, it's actually inspired me to re-tap into that. And one of the things that I feel like, you know, I had this feeling for a long time of, and I started this as a musician, so that I kind of led into that. But at the same time, I got into the sound therapy and healing with sound, like, type of thing. And actually, when I was in Arizona, I mean, I barely performed music. And that's a big deal for me because, like, I was performing a lot before that. And so, you know, I think there's this great place for growth there, whether you came in as a musician or you're, you know, merging into the musician and you have that feeling. Cause, like, the feeling for me, and this is probably an archetype that people can identify with, is like when you're doing sound, you know, and like you doing it in maybe random places, and then you just all of a sudden there's that person there that really needed that medicine or whatever it might be. It's like there's a reason for that. You know, it's like spirit, creator, whatever divine intelligence that's like leading this. It's like it's calling you forward to like share that and like get it out there and like be public with it. And so I just love that offering, because I think if, you know, anybody's listening to this, if you feel that call where it's like, yeah, I get so lit up by sharing this with people, like, follow that. It doesn't have to just be in this like containers where, you know, you're doing this thing with the group and it's like, you know, you're safe there, like break your heart open and just like put it out there. And it's like amazing what happens like when you step into that path, if it's authentic. In my experience, that's
100%. Yeah. 100%. I'm like, you know, like I said at the beginning, I'm like so blown away that our Gaia song track is at like 200,000 views on YouTube. I mean, and you know, thousands in other places too, but like it's been so incredible to just see like this just thing we wanted to create, you know, that just like we just put it out there with zero attachment, and it's just like she's living her life out there, like she's soaring. You know, it's just so beautiful to see, you know, and like receiving messages and comments of like, I listen to this every day and it brings me so much peace. And you know, it's like there's such a desire for intentional music as medicine, you know, sound healing tracks and all these things. Like it doesn't have to be the standard structure of a song. Like we need more of this like truly authentic art and medicine to come through. And I think, like you said, there's a lot of people out there that are meant to do this work, that are feeling called to this work. And it really is a matter of like allowing yourself to crack open and be seen and be bigger. And so just, yeah, it's such a beautiful invitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again. It's been such a beautiful conversation. And thank you all for tuning in. We love you so much. And we're here. Reach out. Love you guys.
Yeah. Much love. Bless.